You guys want to know my favorite fun fact on Pokemon Showdown? It's that when you use the data command for the word amazing, Whiscash pops up. However, Whiscash has been anything but amazing in Gen 3's history. Whiscash is a Pokemon that has always been in Swampert's background as a water ground type. It's sad that in the game it was introduced, most people selected Mudkip as their starter, played through the game to evolve it into a Swampert, and by the time they encounter Barboach, the pre-evolution, they're like, why would I want to discount Swampert? This even holds true in competitive singles, where Swampert has much more attack, more special attack, more bulk overall, and a much more useful ability powering up its water moves. Swampert's move pool stands out from Whiscash's as well. Of the notable moves Swampert learns that Whiscash doesn't, Hydro Pump, Curse, Refresh, and Focus Punch are some of the biggest, making Swampert the versatile rock resist in competitive singles that Whiscash never was and never will be. So how could Whiscash ever be better than Swampert in anything Pokemon Emerald? How does Whiscash shine above Swampert in the Emerald Battle Factory? Well, we're gonna find out. But first, there's something else amazing I want to share. So here's another crazy fun fact. When you type in DT crazy, the fact that 95% of you haven't subscribed shows up. Be Cash Money and click the subscribe button. So, of course, to even compare Whiscash and Swampert in the first place and see who's the better water ground in the Battle Factory, we gotta load up our PC. We're gonna go to our factory box and wow, look at that. A bunch of legitimate level 50 Whiscashes and Swamperts. Either way, let's first look at Whiscash 1. Whiscash 1 has max attack and max HP, and it carries Quake Slide coverage with Amnesia and Rest. This is a really, really great set in round 4 and in the rounds where you can have multiple different Whiscashes. I've used this before in my 104 win streak to help me stall out Pokemon like Umbreon and Zapdos because Rest is such a good move in the factory. Even when you have a mediocre Pokemon like Whiscash and it's not hitting super hard and it's not taking every single hit, just having Rest by itself makes this Whiscash especially potent. And surprisingly, I like it better than Swampert 1. You might look at Swampert 1 and laugh at the fact that its attack stat is the same as Whiscash, and this is actually max bulk Swampert. It has 170 in HP, 170 defense, and 170 in special defense. And this set is pretty good, don't get me wrong. It's a cursing Swampert, and it's using Earthquake. It can counter on you, and it rests. The problem with this Swampert that I have is that this Swampert is a huge liability when you're using it, because you only have Earthquake as a coverage option, meaning that any ground resist, such as Heracross, becomes scary, and literally anything that flies above the ground or has Levitate. That's why when you use this Swampert, you kind of got to play clenched, because you're like, what if there's a flying type in the back or a Levitator in the back, and all of a sudden you just can't win. And the same goes for when you're facing Swampert. Swampert on the opponent's side becomes somewhat worse than Whiscash 1 because you can manipulate it so easily if you have a flying type or a levitator yourself, which is pretty common because in your drafts you should be prioritizing getting those ground immunities and resists. Moving on to Whiscash 2, we have a glorious Whiscash 2 where Nintendo basically says, oh shoot, we gotta show why we even made Whiscash in the first place. Oh, it has Spark and Future Sight. And those are options that Swampert doesn't. This Whiscash also has Shell Bell, which is an okay item, and max attack and max special attack. And yeah, it's just Surf, Earthquake, Spark, which is pretty much only useful for Gyarados. And then Future Sight has interesting applications that I actually used, where I was like, I needed to fish around a counter plus Mirror Coat Swampert. Speaking of that Swampert, this is Swampert 2. It has Surf, Earthquake, counter Mirror Coat, and again max bulk. What makes this Swampert on the opponent's side not super scary is that counter and Mirror Coat are super exploitable if you know how the AI works. When the AI sees you use a physical move, the next turn they are very likely to use counter, and vice versa with Mirror Coat. Same with status moves. When you use a status moves, for some reason it's a little bit buggy and they want to use counter and Mirror Coat a lot. And because this Swampert has both of them, those checks kind of stack up, and this thing will spam counter and Mirror Coat all the time, which gives you free switches, which is so huge in the Battle Factory. Compare this to Whiscash 2, which while it's not going to be hitting absurdly hard, this thing still objectively never gives you free switches. As a player, I would still want to use Swampert 2 over Whiscash. I think it's a better Pokemon because you're smart. You can use Counter and Mirror Coat over Whiscash, but I think on the opponent side, I think they're surprisingly somewhat even just because of how exploitable Swampert is. Moving on to the third set for Whiscash, we have the infamous Rest Talk Surf Fissure Whiscash with Chestoberry. This is a set that also shows one of the main reasons why Whiscash is scarier on the opponent side than a Swampert, and that's because this one has Fissure and Swampert does not learn Fissure. Fissure in singles and competitive ADV is such an it's banned. I forgot to say it's banned, but even in metagames where it's not banned, such as VGC, it's extremely uncompetitive and not very useful because it only has 30% accuracy. However, what makes this Whiscash so scary and potentially useful on your side is that Fissure and other OHKO moves ignore double team evasion boosts. There are a lot of double team Pokemon in the factory, and you will want to use them yourselves because they're very good. But on the opponent side, they're going to love to set up double team over and over again, and Fissure gives you an out versus that. However, and also on the opponent side of the field, because the smart AI knows not to use Rest when it's at full health, not to use Sleep Talk when it's at full health. It won't even use Rest and Sleep Talk when it's chipped a little bit. And if Surf isn't doing a lot of damage, this Whiscash is going to be clicking Fissure a lot, which makes it super, super dangerous to getting hacked during a set. Another thing that I figured I'd mention at this point that is something that isn't useful in singles at all, but is now useful in Battle Factory, is Whiscash's ability Oblivious. Attract is also a somewhat common move in Battle Factory and a very, very annoying move from Pokemon such as Espeon, Gengar, Salamence. I think even an Umbreon has Attract. And you using Whiscash can beat that anti-BS strategy, but it's also annoying when the opponent's Whiscash has Oblivious because you can't Attract and prevent it from using Fissure a lot of the time. Now, I'm also going to briefly talk about Whiscash's fourth set because Swampert's third and fourth sets are very similar. This is the best Whiscash, Whiscash 4. They gave it all the coverage you want, Surf, Earthquake, Ice Beam, but then that little extra sprinkle that Swampert doesn't have in Fissure. This is a good set. This is a very, very good set because Fissure, again, gives you those outs versus those double team spam Pokemon. And on the opponent side, it's super scary because of Quick Claw plus OHKO move. That could just be about, I think, an 8%-ish chance that your run is just over when it hits a Quick Claw Fissure. And Whiscash here, it doesn't have any bulk investment. It's max special attack, max attack, quiet, but it's still a water ground type. It only has one weakness. It's not going to die to any move that isn't boosted by Choice Band or by stat boosts. And so this Whiscash on the opponent's side is very, very scary. Now, comparing this to Swampert 3, Swampert 3, it has Surf, Earthquake, Ice Beam. You are always going to want to use a Swampert over a Whiscash on your side of the field because when you can manipulate this coverage and you have Swampert's base stat total, which even by just me flickering between back and forth is obviously better, you're going to want to use this Swampert. On the opponent side, it's also still very, very scary. However, again, because it'll often want to use Counter a lot of the time, this is a very manipulatable Pokemon. And Swampert 4 is the same thing. It has Mirror Coat. This one's Quiet instead of Adamant. They both have Shellbell, which are whatever items. But yeah, again, this is a great Pokemon. You're going to want to use it. However, it's technically not as scary as Fissure Whiscash. Especially the fact that 2 out of 4 Whiscash sets are going to be Fissure and they can click it at any time. Whiscash 3 is going to love clicking that Fissure, and it's going to be really, really scary. And so, yeah, I just think it's interesting. I think it's so cool that Whiscash actually has viability over Swampert in this part of Pokemon Emerald. Nobody ever uses Whiscash, but here it is. So you got this far in my video, which means you probably like my content. You should consider subscribing and becoming a member. It's $3. It helps directly support an up-and-coming YouTuber like myself. And also, here's a stream schedule that I'm starting on October 16th. Screenshot it. I don't feel like talking anymore. See you guys in the next video.